Hey guys, it's Will. Today I'm going to talk about how to know how much money to raise for your social impact company or your startup. Let's get going. Okay, so how much money should you raise for your company? This is a question that a lot of people have different answers to, and I've got my own different answers. So I'm gonna tell you how I answer this question when companies ask me, how much money should I raise? The quick answer is twice as much as you need to either A, get to default alive status, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, or B, twice as much as you need to significantly de-risk the business, and I'll explain that in a minute. So first, this concept of default dead versus default alive. This comes from Paul Graham, and I'll link to the article in the notes below this video. But default dead and default alive, I think the article is called Know If You're Default Dead or Default Alive. So default dead means that if you don't change something significant in the business, you're going to run out of cash and you're gonna have to shut the business down or sell it. That's default dead. Default alive is you're either making money, you're profitable, or you could tweak some knobs and change a few things in the business and quite easily become profitable. That's default alive. So if you're running a company, it's very important to always know whether you're default dead, meaning you're gonna need to figure something else out that you don't know the answer to yet, launch a new product or figure out how to get people to pay you more money for your product or raise money. That's default dead, or you're gonna die. Or default alive, meaning the company can be stable for an indeterminate amount of time based on what you've already accomplished. So it's either profitable, you have grant money coming in, or it's not profitable, but you could tweak some knobs and make it profitable. So that's default dead and default alive. So one answer to the question of how much money should you raise for your company is twice as much as you need to be default alive or to get to default alive. And the reason for this is because it always takes way more time and energy and money to accomplish something once you're in it, like to actually get something done, to actually reach a milestone on the road than you think it is when you're just looking at the road and looking at the milestone and thinking, oh yeah, we could get there with 200,000. I tell people, no, raise 400,000. If you think you need 200, raise 400. If you think you need 400, raise 800. If you think you need 800, raise 1.5. So that's one answer to the question of how much money to raise is twice as much money as you need to get to default alive status. Some examples of this could be if you're starting an app and you think the revenue model is going to be people are going to pay you for premium features in the app, we'll figure out how many people need to pay you and what they'd be paying for in order to make the company default alive, meaning relaxed, reliable profitability, and figure out what you need to build, and then raise twice as much money as you think you're going to need to build that. That way, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to need to raise more money in the future because you raised twice as much as you think you needed to raise to hit a specific milestone, and that should give you enough time if you stay focused to hit that milestone. Okay, so that's one answer to the question. The second answer to the question is the question of how much money should I raise for my startup is twice as much money as you need to significantly de-risk the business. So what does de-risk the business mean? This was explained to me by Gabe Zickerman, one of Kindara's investors, and I always remembered it because it stuck in my mind and it seemed so brilliant and so simple. He said to me, the point of a fundraise is to de-risk your business. The point of raising money is to de-risk your business. And the reason is because if you look at a valuation graph of a company, companies typically raise money to accomplish a very specific thing. Then they accomplish that thing and the value of the company goes up. And now with the new higher value of the company, by the way, the value of the company goes up because there's now less risk in the company. So raise some money, accomplish some stuff, less risk in the company, value of the company goes up. Then you're able to raise more money on that higher valuation and then accomplish more stuff, de-risk the business some more, value of the company goes up. So it's this ladder that goes like this. And every horizontal in the ladder is the company de-risking the business, figuring out some part of the business, getting it working in a new way that means there's less risk overall for the business to succeed. So when you look at your business, there's probably one or two things that hold the most risk for the business. Like maybe you haven't figured out customer acquisition, or maybe you haven't figured out monetization of your customer, or maybe you haven't figured out the brand, or maybe you haven't launched the product yet. Maybe you haven't done the engineering that you need to do in order to launch the product. So all those discrete pieces of work significantly de-risk the business. And an answer to the question, how much money should I raise, could be raise twice as much as you need to get those major risk factors out of the business. Okay, so those are the two answers of how much money should I raise for my startup. And here's how I would recommend thinking about this. I'll give you some steps or a process to answer the question. Okay, so the first step in the process is to start with your 10-year vision. So take some time and put yourself in the future. I have a process that I go through with people. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to my website and check that out. But go into the future 10 years and look around and see what this business looks like based on everything you know about the business and everything you know about the market and what you actually want to create. Look into the future and visualize what it is that the business looks like in 10 years. And you want to get really specific with this. So you want to get down to how many customers are you going to have, how much are they going to be paying, for what, how many employees. Like, get a crisp picture in your mind of what you want the business to look like in 10 years and what you think it can look like in 10 years based on all your market assumptions that you have now. Then, from that 10-year vision, go down to a 3-year vision and map out a 3-year vision, and then go down to a 1-year vision and map out what needs to happen this year in order for the 3-year vision to happen and what needs to happen in 3 years in order for the 10-year vision to happen. So now you've got, call it a runway or a projection of in time of what your business looks like. Now that you have this vision, ask yourself the question, what are the biggest risks that are gonna maybe get in the way of the 10-year vision not happening? Like, what are the things that are gonna get in the way? Maybe the risk is we haven't figured out product market fit yet. Like, we have a product, but it's not growing organically. Like, we're not bringing in new users without doing anything. We're hustling for all the users. If we're gonna get to 1 million users, we need to get product market fit. Maybe we feel like we have product market fit, but our market is too small. Like, we need to pivot into this adjacent market, because if we get into that bigger market, we're gonna get much more lift than we can in this small market. Maybe it's we need to finish the product. We're building it, we have a prototype, it looks good, it's working, but it's not done yet, and we need to finish it and launch it. So when you have identified the major risks, and usually there's like 1 or 2 for any given business at any given point in time, you identify these major risks. Those are the things that are going to significantly de-risk your business and that you should raise money to figure out. So in the examples I gave of a company that doesn't have, like, is working on a product and hasn't launched it yet, I'd say raise twice as much money as you think you need to actually launch the product, for a number of reasons that I spoke about a little bit already. But if you raise twice as much as you think you need, that's going to give you enough to actually do it, because problems are going to happen, things are going to turn out more complex, people are going to quit, there's going to be some weird wrinkle in the marketplace that slows you down and takes more time, so you burn more cash. Raising twice as much is going to help you be able to weather those realities of actually getting stuff done in the world. And also, it's going to give you runway at the end. Once you've shipped the product, like built the product, shipped the product, it's going to give you runway for however many months you might need to raise more money. If it's pivoting into an adjacent market, if you raise twice as much as you think you need to pivot, you're going to be able to pivot, realize that the new market is a little bit more difficult or harder than you thought it would be, and then go and figure out that market and get some initial traction, and then still have some money in the bank in order to raise more money. So that's why I think it's really important to name the risks, the major risks in your business, figure out which ones you're going to tackle with the money that you're raising, and then be sure to raise twice as much as you think you need to tackle those risks in a realistic scenario, so that you can weather the storms that are going to hit as you tackle the risks, and also have some runway in order to raise more money if that's what you decide to do. So I'm going to do another video on this, but the phenomenon of shit taking longer than you think it's going to, I've heard it called the MATRYOSHKA doll effect. It's just the reality that whenever you tackle a piece of work, you're looking at it from the outside. When you open the hood of a car, stuff starts to get a lot more complex than the car looked when you're just looking at it. And it's true across any kind of project, creating anything really. It turns out to be more complex. There's unseen complexity that rears its head. So that's why it's important, I think, to raise twice as much as you think you're going to need. So those are my 2 answers to the question, how much money should we raise? The first one is twice as much as you need to get to default alive status. If you get to default alive status, then you have the beautiful luxury of not needing to raise money at any point in time. And if you don't need to raise money, it gets a lot easier to raise money. A lot easier to raise money because you're not desperate and you have time and you can be picky and choosy. All the things that you don't have when you need to raise money are alleviated when you're default alive. So I love the answer, twice as much as you need to get to default alive. If you need $500,000 and you think you can get to default alive, raise $1 million, get to default alive, start growing the company with the money you have, and then if raising more money will be easy. And this is not something that gets talked about a lot in the startup world because there's this myth that companies should be perpetually raising money or dying. What people don't tell you is that in that type of scenario, when you need to raise money or the company's toast, people get diluted to a much higher degree. The startup founders end up with much less leverage in the deals and the term sheets that get signed. So it's a beautiful thing for founders to be default alive because it gives you the luxury of raising the amount of money you want from the people that you want to raise it from on your schedule. So I love that answer. The second answer, raise twice as much money as you need to significantly de-risk the business, is also a great answer, especially if you're building a company that can't be default alive for maybe until a few $1 million are put in, depending on the type of product you're building. But I would encourage you to think long and hard, how do we become default alive? Because I think almost every business can become default alive with a few $100,000. The second answer is twice as much as you need to significantly de-risk the business. And this is the magical way to think about fundraising because if you're able to raise money based on what you have now and you de-risk the business significantly, well then it follows that if you can raise money now, you should be able to raise money later at a higher valuation. So those are the two ways to think about how to answer the question of how much money should I raise for my startup. I hope that's helpful. You guys, if you want more startup resources for social impact companies and for CEOs, please head over to my website or check the links in the description below. If there's any topics you want me to cover specifically, please comment and I will cover them. And with that, keep kicking ass and I'll see you next time. Bye.